That should be at every table, which gives more details and questions, FAQs about the museum itself. We were founded last June 22nd of 2022, and in the course of a little over a year, we have had several exhibits. The first one was Texas Tamaladas, a family tradition. That was at Dallas City Hall last December, which got great reviews. We got good exposure on networks and NPR. Our second exhibit was this past March, and it was Tejanas at the Alamo. And people thought, oh, there were Tejanas at the Alamo? And I said, of course, who do you think was there? And this is part of our mission, is telling the history of the Mexican-American experience through our own eyes and in our own words. Because oftentimes this history is not shared with the rest of the state and with our own gente. I'm president of the museum. By trade, I'm an architect. I was born in the valley in San Benito, where did I hear that? There we go. I will be there tomorrow for a commemorative walk about the Matanza in 1915, which oftentimes people don't know that it was very tumultuous down on the border from 1910 to 1920 during the Mexican Revolution. So they're having a walk. I'm flying out there tonight, and I will be part of that walk tomorrow. I was born there. I grew up in San Antonio. My dad was an immigration lawyer, so he took us up there, and that's where I grew up. Went to school at Notre Dame. 17 years of Catholic school, so I'm very, so I know how to suffer in silence, you know. Anyway, it was a great education, and then I went to New York for about 20 years, and that was a great experience. And now I'm back in Texas. I moved back here in 2005, and Dallas is my new home. So it's really important to me to really be part of the community and learn how the Mexican-American experience is really different in every part of the state. With that being said, we had a pop-up at the fair this past year. I don't know if anyone went there. But part of what we did was we put up a map of Texas and we asked people where they were from. So this is a half-size version. I have the full size if anyone wants to use it. And what it showed is that people that came to the fair are from all over Texas. And our museum is about the Mexican-American experience of all of Texas. And there is no place in Texas where you can learn about the whole state and the Mexican-American experience in one place. We're all a bit siloed. Each region has their own museum, and we need to have them write their own history, their own experiences, and send them to us so that we can share them with the rest of the state. So that's kind of the big picture of the museum. If you have questions, look at those sheets. Go to our website, go to our Facebook site. We have lots of pictures from the Fair Park. What was really cool about the experience was just meeting people from all over. I was there almost every day, as were several of our board members and volunteers. And we just met people from all over the state. Everyone was very interested in the museum. Everyone said, oh, isn't there a museum already? And there isn't. And that's what we've created. And we need your support. Go to our website. If you could donate, that would be great. If you could volunteer, that'd be great. We need connections all over the state too. So, like for me, I live here, but I have connections in San Antonio and the Valley. If you have connections all over the state, we welcome those connections so that we can unify and create one museum for all of Texas about the Mexican-American Museum and the experience that is very specific, because we're not Mexican enough to be Mexican. In some people's eyes, we're not American enough to be American. We're somewhere in between. And that is a very special experience and very specific to Texas. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, or look at the handouts go to our website, check us out. And the Tuesday after Thanksgiving is National Giving Day. So if you would like to help us or support us financially, that would be a great day to do that. Any quick questions?
Do you know where I should go to? Hold on, let me give you the microphone's coming at you. Somebody have a question?
I think he's just.
Any questions?
He has a question.
Yeah, how do we get online?
Well, if you have a phone or computer or
I have it,
a
I'm used to it.
right, if you go to www.tmamt.org, that will send you to our website. And then all the information is on there. Albert? There are future exhibits coming up. Our next, good question. We are right now in discussions with the University of Dallas, and we will be presenting an exhibit called Life and Death on the Border, 1910 to 1920. It was curated by the LULAC Museum, which is in Austin, which is the state museum, as well as a group of professors that are called Refusing to Forget. And what it captures is the history of the borderland during the Mexican Revolution. And it was a very tumultuous time. Lots of people, innocent people were killed, and no one is telling this history. It's a dark history, but it's true and it's part of our history. And we need to share that with this generation and future generations. So that will be at the University of Dallas, probably late January, early February. Yes, sir.
Do you have any connections with Mario Rio from the University of Texas? And their organization of the Mexican American students?
No, but those are the type of connections that we need. So if you can make introductions for us, that would be great, either for myself or any of the board members.
That organization is awesome. Their collections and everything, I think it's one of the premier collections in the United States.
Right, and those are the type of
I
things.
have connections.
Perfect. As I said, this past weekend, this coming weekend, I'm going to the Valley and I'm meeting with the director of the Museum of South Texas. And so once again, I'll learn how they do their projects. I've met with people in El Paso. I'm going to be traveling to Houston and to Corpus to meet with those people. Because once again, we're very siloed and the information is there. We just need to extract it, edit it, and put it in one place. So that everyone in Texas and everyone in the country can come to Dallas and see the whole picture of our history and what the Mexican-American experience is like.
I have a question. My question is, there's a lot of controversy in Washington, D.C. over the Latino museum, so to speak, and what format that should take and what they should highlight. Do you have any opinions on that? Given that a lot of this land is belong to Mexico and Spain, and we're part of that, that's our inheritance. I'm just curious whether Mexican-American history can be projected, given the numbers that we have, 42 million or so. Your opinion?
I would think so. This is my personal opinion. Part of why we founded this museum and called it the Mexican-American Museum of Texas is because in Texas specifically, we are over 40% of the population per the 2020 census, and of that percentage, 83% have Mexican roots. So in Texas specifically, if you're Latino, you probably have Mexican roots. Regarding that museum is really for all Latinos in America. So I'm not sure how they're going to break it up, whether it's going to be proportionate to which country people came from. But one would think that it would be proportionate. I can't speak to that. I know a few people who are on that board, and I've been in contact with them about our museum. So if one just looks at the statistics, I would venture to say that of the Latinos in all of America, the high proportion has Mexican roots. Once again, because everything west of the Mississippi used to be New Spain and then became Mexico in 1820. So our roots are very deep here. They predate, oftentimes people think that Texas started in 1836 and we were here way before that. But that history is not being told, and it's not being documented, and it's not being shared with the next generation, because they need to know that they belong here and they have belonged here for many generations, but they don't know that. So that's part of our mission of the museum, is to share that and to give that sense of belonging to the generations, our current ones that are living and the future ones. Because if we don't document it and we don't share that, they won't know that, because it's not being written by other people. It needs to be written by us. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
I hate to be the only guy asking questions. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, in terms of, thank you. In terms of location, and it says here that, you're looking for location, I would hope that you would be looking in the downtown area, close to the Latino Cultural Center that's there, because all the other museums are in downtown, so.
Well, that is one option. We've had various discussions about it. The State Fair is a location that has been discussed, and that has historical relevance because in 1936, when it was started, Mexican Americans were not welcome. And our history is not there, and that State Fair is for all of the state, and our museum is for all of the state. So that's a natural location. We have been in discussions with them. To your point, I think we can have, assuming that that's where we end up having our building, I think it would make sense to have a pilot area in that museum district in order to be as kind of a precursor or preamble to the major museum, or send them to the State Fair. I don't know if everyone's aware, but they're doing a lot of development on the south side of the fair itself. I think over $150 million worth. And that's part of the discussion. Hopefully we will be part of it. We've also been talking to the City Council. There's a big bond issue coming up in the spring. Currently, we're not on the bond issue, but I encourage everyone to call your City Council people and ask them that we be on there, at least partially. That would be great. That would be a big kickstart for fundraising if the city could support us in some way. The location, with the Latino Cultural Center has also been discussed. People often say, well, doesn't it already exist? And they refer to the Latino Cultural Center, which is not unlike the national one, a cultural center for all Latinos, not specifically Mexican Americans. So we, once again, are specific. We're also going to have a permanent collection, which is not what the cultural center does. So it's a museum, it's not a cultural center, although it will kind of merge some of those same elements. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that it's going to be a while before we get the museum up and going, but my hope is that once we get it up and going, that we are able to reach out to our schools, to have our kids, because it is very important for our youth to know where we came from, what shoulders they're standing on now, that they are being to progress in life. Because a lot of Latinos right now, especially our young kids, have no idea about the killings on the board from 19 to 1915. There's a lot of history that has never been taught in our schools. So those of us that care and have learned, we have learned it from our abuelos, from our tias, from, familia, and that's how we know that these things truly did happen. But if we do not share it with our youth, it's going to die when we die. Thank you.
Thank you. The question was about, the next generation, and I totally agree with you. Part of our mission is sharing that education with our next generations. We are all here because our ancestors were here. And oftentimes we don't even know our own history. So we need to learn our own history. Several of our board members, including myself, are part of a genealogy group, and that's part of how this all came to be. But documenting that history is really important. Once again, we are talking to principals and to educators, because once we are up and running, and even before that, because we're doing pop-ups, it may take us several years, hopefully not too many years, to raise the money for the actual bricks and mortar. But in the meantime, what we decided to do, even though we don't have a building, we can do pop-up exhibits. And that's where the Tamalada exhibit came from. That's where the Tejanas at the Alamo. The next exhibit will be Life and Death on the Border. That history can be told, and we're very fortunate to be able to partner with the City of Dallas, with State Fair, with University of Dallas, and other locations. And we want to roll these out around the state so that everyone feels part of it. You know, if you look at this map, we got a lot of people from El Paso, but everyone forgets El Paso's part of Texas. And I think they kind of forget that too. So we need to bring them into the fold. South Texas is very far south, not unlike El Paso. So we need to bring them into the fold. You know, DFW obviously is well populated, but the Panhandle also is not historically a place where a lot of Mexican Americans went. But there are people up there, and we need to get their history too. So education is really important, but I think it starts with us. We have to educate ourselves, and then we can educate the next generation.
A couple of questions real quick. First of all, I know that you had a good experience at the State Fair. Why don't you let us know what the reactions from most people that showed up? Second, explain on that map what those little black dots do. Thank you.
Okay. Albert was one of my compadres at the fair. We sat there, we shook hands, we kissed babies, whatever we had to do. This map, these black dots were actual physical little pins. So people would look where they were from, and they would pin on the map itself. Everyone was very excited. Some people pinned where they were born, like I did, so I pinned the valley. Other people pinned where they lived, or some people weren't from Texas, but their parents were from Texas. So they pinned where their parents were from. So it was a very unifying exercise, and it really is a great visual snapshot of the interest of the museum, because these are the people who actually saw our pop-up exhibits, and they were very thrilled, first of all, to know that the museum is in the works, and that it's about their history, and they get to write their own history. So this was really a great experience for them, and we had pictures. If you go to our Facebook, there are lots of pictures from the fair with different families that took pictures in front of the map, and then went in there and had lots of questions about it. Part of the exhibit also included, on the educational side, this past spring we partnered with UTSA in San Antonio with their architecture department. So their spring project was to design our museum. And we came up with 13 really wonderful options for the museum. And we brought them up to Dallas. We paid for them to stay here for a couple of days. We had a big party for them. And they came and selected 3 different locations in Dallas that they thought would be good locations for the museum. So once again, we want to engage the next generation because this is for them, and then for their generation after that. So we just thought it was really interesting. So part of the pop-up exhibit included 3 different samples of those student proposals. What we like to do going forward is partner with all the other architectural departments in Texas and see what they have to say. And then do a huge exhibit that show all the, I think there's 7 or 8 different architectural project departments in Texas. And see what they have to say. What do they want it to look like? Part of it might be, virtual. Who knows? We're looking for those opinions and connections. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
We're out of time.
No, we're out.
We have to go to
Okay.
the other speakers. I'm sorry, but is there a short question?
Do you have a projected date that you really want to be open?
The question was projected date. We would like to be open within the next 3 to 5 years. It's a big hall, it costs a lot of money. So we need to talk to a lot of people, get some major supporters. So once again, any connections you guys can help us with, we would really appreciate. Corporate, private, institutional, foundations, all that is our venues for funding us. Thank you.
I had a whole bunch of questions to ask you, but there's been a lot of revelations by stories, Hispanic stories. In particular, one thing that really impressed me is that we talk about the railroad or during slavery going north, but nobody was writing anything about all the thousands that went south to Mexico and became citizens in Mexico automatically. I happen to have an interest because my family comes from Musquis, Coahuila, one of the part of my family. So Melchor Musquis was actually that lieutenant colonel at the time that Vicente Guerrero was the president at the time and outlawed slavery before any country in the world. And so this is something that they don't teach anywhere in Texas history. And I want you to read about the history of Vicente Guerrero, who was a general, a great military hero, Afro-Mexican, okay? And so we need to know that history, because we get into competing with each other, the different groups of color, and we have more in common than not. Enough said.
We come in all colors.
Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Okay? We need to have him here again and more time.
There's a question. There's a question. Yes, sir, Mr.
I got a
Flores.
young man back there, sir.
It's very important.
Very short. Go.
So I'm from Grand Prairie, and I noticed that in all our public libraries, you walk in, and there's not one Mexican American or Latino veteran when you walk in the library. How can the Mexican American Museum help me or help get those veterans recognized and put in the libraries when people walk in the city of Fresno?
Well, that's definitely part of our history, and Mexican Americans have been in the Civil War, in World War I, and World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Desert Storm. I mean, we have been very much part of the fabric. There's a group called Last Patrol. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're connected to Dallas Legacy Mission. And I think Juanita's talking to you there. They are very much involved with sharing the veterans' story. And I believe in our museum we will have a military section that each different region can talk about. Like there's also many Medal of Honor recipients that are Mexican American, and people just don't know about it because history gets lost if you don't write it. And we all have to beat the same drum together. So yes, whatever we can do to help. If it's connections, I think Last Patrol would be a great group to help you with that.
You might want to invite them to your school. David, you might want to invite them to the board first so they can be educated. And then you can put pressure on the teachers there about what you expect of them to teach our history. Thank you very much for being here, Gus. And now I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Michelle Davis, who's the Director of Strategic Communications at the Army Headquarters. As Strategic Communications, Ms. Davis is responsible for developing and implementing the Civilian Human Resources Agency Strategic Communications Plan and marketing strategies. But we have been working with the Army in terms of some of the recruiting needs. As you know, most of the armed forces have not been meeting their goals, and obviously we cannot be protected. We don't have a full armed forces throughout the world. We can't have freedom in our country. We don't have the military to support our goals, and so can I bring you to the table and bring you to the podium? Please let's welcome Michelle Davis. Can I hear an applause?
First of all, good morning and thank you very much. I consider it an extreme honor to be here with you all today to talk about the opportunities that we have available to all of us as Department of the Army civilians. As he stated, my name is Michelle Davis. I've been a Department of the Army civilian for 20 years now. I'm very proud to say that I celebrated that while out here working with LULAC. So it is an extreme honor. I will tell you, most places that I go to talk about what it means to be an Army civilian, the first thing people ask is, what is an Army civilian? When you see our Army icon, the star with U.S. Army under it, the first thing people think about is serving in uniform. I've never served in uniform. I've been a pure Army civilian for, like I said, 20 years, never worn the uniform. However, I have been an Army spouse for 20 plus years through 7 deployments, raising 2 children, living abroad, and in the great U.S. And exactly, yes, I have served. And I am also proud to say that I'm now an Army mom. My son graduated from West Point class of 2019 and is currently serving in the Army formation as a captain at Fort Liberty. So I can say I've served in all capacities, it seems, except in uniform. But what I'm here today to talk to you all about is the partnership that I am working with establishing with LULAC to bring awareness to what it means to be an Army civilian. We serve in support of our soldiers to provide the continuity, meaning our soldiers are responsible for protecting and defending the nation and the nation's wars. And so that being said, who provides all of the services and support when they're not able to do that? That's Army civilians. We are a formation of about 350,000 strong all over the world. Wherever the Army has a footprint, we are there serving in support. And what I've learned in my travels over the last 20 years is that people don't know that you too can be an Army civilian, whether you are a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen. So we have thousands of vacancies all over the Army that we are having difficulty filling. You may see in the news where employers are having difficulty filling, or you go to a restaurant and you see that they're short-staffed, so your wait is a little bit longer, simply because they don't have people filling the positions. Well, we have the same struggle. So what I'm here doing is building partnerships for the Army to ensure that we're reaching community influencers, and those community influencers such as yourself can spread the word about the opportunities available as a Department of the Army civilian. For those of you in the back, or for those of you who have children, we have programs to support hiring student interns. Student interns are those who are in academic programs post-secondary, meaning you're in a college or university, whether it's a trade school or a four-year university, and we hire you into difficult-to-fill positions that will, you serve for 12 weeks during the summer. As Department of the Army civilians, you get paid, and upon completion of whatever academic program that has you listed as a student, you are then non-competitively promoted into one of our other programs where we train you for 2 years. You have a salary, you travel the world training, all of this free to you, the Army pays for it, and then you become a permanent Department of the Army civilian like myself, where you have the opportunity to create generational opportunity through your career, as I've been able to do. I will tell you, the Army has absolutely changed my life. Not only, has it created opportunities for my son and my spouse, but they're also paying for my daughter to go to college. I've not paid a dime, so there's lots of opportunity through these programs. There's lots of opportunities available outside of these programs. When I became a Department of the Army civilian, it was not by way of a program. We're building programs to make it easier so that when I stand in front of a crowd, or any of my colleagues stand in front of a crowd, we have something to offer everybody. Whether it's in uniform, out of uniform, however you feel propense to serve, we have something to offer you. But again, the idea is, for me, at this stage in my career as an Army senior civilian, I choose to go out and make sure that all of the communities, especially those who are underrepresented communities, like those that I come from, are aware that at any stage in your life, whether again you're a student, you are a recent graduate, or looking for a second career, we have opportunities available to you. So I'm hoping that, as we continue to work with LULAC and some of the community influencers, that you all are able to assist us with highlighting Army as the employer of choice. Now, I will be available to answer any questions that you might have, but especially those of you who are, working in career centers at the colleges, our elected officials, anybody who's in the high schools. I met a couple of principals earlier, wherever, or you're a mom and you're looking for opportunity for, or mother or father, sorry, I don't leave the fathers out. But you're looking for opportunities for your children, family members, whomever. We're available to assist you with highlighting Army as the employer of choice. I personally think it's a great option. Absolutely changed my life. So if you're looking for generational change in terms of a career and access to opportunity, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's all I have. So subject to your questions.
Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, what's the age limit?
Microphone, please. Again.
What is the age limit to be able to get on?
So as students, at some of our installations, we have students and they're still in high school in our summer programs. For our official student intern program, that is college age. Some people go to college at 17, but it's college age. And then I will tell you that in my past, when I was a career program director responsible for recruiting, retaining, and developing civilians, I hired a 69-year-old intern. And I will tell you, I did that because there is no age discrimination here. But he was retired from the Navy, so had a full career. I want to say he served for 30 years in uniform. He was living in California, wanted to come to Texas, San Antonio to be exact, and was looking for an opportunity. He had the skill set I was looking for, and he is still serving today as a Department of the Army civilian. So that's why I hear a lot of people when they talk about recruiting, and it's not just Army, but other employers, the conversation is, we're looking for young people. Every time I hear somebody say that, because that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, I'm like, no, we're looking for all people. All people, if you're looking for another opportunity for employment, we're looking for you. So thank you for that question. Are there any others?
I got to recognize my friend Rafaela Swan, who's here, she works at the national level. She's our CEO of Washington, D.C., but based in Dallas. So she's here in the crowd. You want to stand up and take about please? Now, you can tell this young lady, and I want to make sure, I think you served in the military, if I'm not mistaken. I know you worked at NASA with Jose Hernandez. We were with him a couple of weeks ago when they launched a million miles away. We need him to do some marketing for you guys.
No, absolutely. And I was actually going to thank Rafaela and Carmen Palomares because of them. That's why I'm here. So, they continue to echo our sentiments in terms of ensuring that our workforce represents everybody. And so, Rafaela, thank you for that. I don't think Roman's here, but if you guys see him, tell him I thank you too. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Now, you don't necessarily have to go to the military side. You can work on the civilian side, which is where my aunts and uncles all worked at Kellyfield in San Antonio, so I'm pretty familiar about that. One step up the ladder in this country anyway. Now,
it's my turn. Okay.
I'll wait for you.
everybody take a pause here. Okay, we have Ruth Torres, who's running for Congressional District number 5, and she is a strategic and hands-on problem solver. I think that is turning chaos into order while championing work with clients for over 25 years. That's why I belong to the union. Raised in Chicago, I used to go to Chicago 3 times, and Miami. My dad lives over there. Ruth Torres went from being in foster homes, a 10th grade dropout, and second-generation single mother to become an HR leader, entrepreneur, business professor, lecturer, author, and executive director for a nonprofit organization called Youth. I bring you Ruth. Take it away.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ruth Torres, and I am running for U.S. Congress District 5. You know, policy differences are normal in every election. But in 2024, democracy is on the ballot. If we do not want our country to be like Ukraine is right now, we're going to have to stand up and fight for our country by voting. And that's what's at stake. When I came to Dallas, I've been in Dallas a total of 14 years now. When I came back to Dallas in 2014, I was just trying to look for work and raise my kids. I was not thinking about politics. But when I got here, I discovered government corruption. And it upset me. And that's why I started running, and I ran for city council, and that didn't happen. And then January 6th happened. And I did not see that accountability happen from those who enabled what happened on January 6th. And I said, if I can unseat one, if there's anything I can do to just get one of these people who had so little regard for our democracy, then I'm going to do my very best to do that. Because I'd rather give it all and fail than not try it all. And so that's why I'm running for this seat. There's a guy in there who's a MAGA Trumper, and I want to fight for our democracy. We need government reform at every level. And I want to talk a little bit about this voucher issue, and that's one thing that's very important to me, but it's a national issue that is a hot one right now. And I want us to understand how significant that is. The intent of this voucher system is to undo Brown v. Board of Education, which integrated our schools. That is the intent. There's a great panic over the Hispanic population. And it is that fear of the majority minority that is driving a lot of these policy changes. And so this voucher system, and there's just a few things that I'm going to cover. I want you to think right now, DISD has 230 schools. 230 schools, and they have one superintendent. That one superintendent, she makes about $338,000 a year. But when you divide that out by student, she's getting $2 per student. With charter schools and this voucher system, you're going to go from having one superintendent to up to at least 50 for the same number of schools. Each of them are going to make $300,000 to $400,000 a year. So now instead of paying $2 per student to your superintendent, that's going to be $15 million a year. That's just DISD. That's not counting statewide. So I want you to understand the ramifications. And then each of those superintendents are going to have their own staff. So you're going to have a shift of dramatic increase in your overhead, less money to actual instruction for your students. And that's why their teachers don't have to be teachers, because they're going to pay them less. And when you pay people less, first of all, that means they're not going to have certification. So DISD schools, you can teach for up to 2 years without certification. And you can go through alternative certification and be certified as a teacher, but you have to already have a 4-year degree for that. If you don't have a 4-year degree, you can't go through alternative certification. How many of you want to get on a plane with a pilot that's not really a pilot? Get your medicines from a pharmacist that's not really a pharmacist? So why should we have teachers who aren't real teachers? And you're going to see that predominantly most charter schools are in our black and brown communities because they're getting regular money and Title I money. So they get more profit. That's why you're finding that. And the top zip codes for incarceration in Texas are populated heavily with underperforming schools. There's a direct correlation. These schools are publicly owned schools right now. You've been paying for them with your property taxes. They're public owned. So when you start these voucher, if we start that voucher program, and every kid that leaves, that means the overhead is there without the income. And that what they'll start to do is they'll start to consolidate classrooms, they'll lay off the teachers, consolidate classrooms, and then they'll consolidate schools. And those schools will be empty buildings in your community to attract homeless until they sell it off for pennies on the dollar. And it'll become anything in your neighborhood. It could be a school, but it could be a storage facility or anything else. And then 20 years down the line, when we finally wake up and say this is bad, you don't have that infrastructure. And it'll be way too expensive to buy that land back to now have public schools again. And all the money that we're paying for these charter schools and voucher private schools, that's not public land. That's privately owned land. Even if they're nonprofits, it's privately owned nonprofits. It's no longer government land. They can then, when we issue bonds, voters, it comes up to the voters to approve that bond or not. These guys don't have to get that. They can go and sell social bonds and raise funds, and then the interest is going to come back on us because they're saying, hey, we're educating our public school students. So there's a lot of ramifications to this, and so that's why it's so important to be informed and say no to this, because there's no accountability. They don't have to take special ed students. It is a horrible proposition. It is a criminal concept by Judas politicians. That's what I call these folks that they buy the seats. They've got so much money, they get so much support from the corporations, so that they get in there and give the laws that benefit them at our expense. They're selling us out, they're selling our children out. So there's a lot of issues that come with that. That's why they have corporate welfare. That's why we protect the gun industry instead of our children. So there's a lot of change that needs to happen. I hope I can count on your support. Ruth Torres for U.S. Congress, District 5. Let me tell you where that includes. It is the easternmost part of Dallas County. Seagoville, Sunnyvale, Mesquite, Garland, Rowlett, Saxe, and then the next 5 counties east. It's Kaufman, Henderson, Wood, Van Zant, and half of Upshur. Those are those properties. I am collecting signatures to get my name on the ballot, so if you're in that community, be happy to, if you would be interested in signing my petition, I would appreciate it. You have my cards, my website is Truth in Congress, and I appreciate your support. I will take any questions you have for me.
The deal with the vouchers.
The question about the vouchers is not a more or less a Republican issue, okay?
It's money.
It's not right. It's the agenda of 2 billionaires. They're the ones setting all this agenda, the bandit books and all eliminating Hispanic studies or Black American studies or whatever. All those agendas, 2 people, billionaires. They are funding the Republican Party in their campaigns. That's why it's over and over and over again that they have to abide by. That's why the governor is going after different sessions. This is going to be what, the 4th special session and everything?
Yes, sir.
We're paying for that, okay? But it's their agenda.
I absolutely agree.
They're preaching all of that. We need to understand this, that if as long as those people have that R on there, he's giving them money. And this is all the way from the local elections, in school boards, all the way up to the governor. As long as they got that R in there, they're getting money from there. And what are they doing? They're getting write-offs, tax write-offs for donations.
Absolutely, and what happens is they're giving this false narrative that we need this because of underperforming schools. Let's know the facts. The facts are that Republicans have been in control of Texas for over 3 decades. Okay, they are in control of our education system, and we are underfunded. We are 42nd in the country on our per pupil spending. We are not. He's holding pay for teachers hostage. We're not funding our public education. Okay, and they're saying, oh, because of wokeism. Look, Republicans have picked the content of these classes. The TEA, that's Mike Moran is appointed by Abbott. So they own it. If they got a problem with content, they own it. Texas develops a template that is used around the country on content. Every other state adjusts from our content. Okay? So it is a lie, it is a false narrative, and we need to be informed. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hold on. Any other questions? Dynamic speaker, what can you say? Thank you so very much for being here with us this morning. Go get them, Congresswoman.
Thank you, you know.
And now we have, before I continue, I wanted to thank Joaquin for helping us. He's our videographer. Thank you, Joaquin. I also want to thank our national historian of search, Luis Briones, take a bow at the national level. And I think we had Dr. Catalina Garcia in the crowd. Would you stand up and take a bow? Dr. Garcia on the Dallas College Board. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you a young lady that's running a very important program, which is March to the Polls. And she's going to tell you all the details about that. And, you know, about 8 or 10 years ago, through LULAC, we got a little scholarship, and we started organizing in all the high schools. That means that the superintendent or their designee has a responsibility to make that every student that's about to turn 18, at 17 and a half, they should start processing them so they become voters. Of course, it's not in their best interest to bring 500,000 new voters or 100,000 new voters because it can swing elections like what has happened in Dallas County. Whatever you can do to help this group, I want to introduce you to Camila Bordeaux, and she's originally from Chile. Welcome on board, Camila.
Muchas gracias. Hola, I hope everybody's doing okay. ¿Cómo están? Quería empezar con una pregunta y es, ¿por qué están aquí hoy día? ¿Alguien me puede dar una respuesta? ¿O 3 personas? I asked, why are you here today? I wanted to start with that. I'm just curious. I was looking around the room. I'm like observing your faces. This is probably not the first time you've been here for many of you. Yes. Why are you here, sir? Your friends are here. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk about that when I start my presentation. Why are you here?
I'm here to be informed about what's going on.
To be informed about what's going on, and thank you for that. And I think I can give you some of that also in my presentation. You.
I wanted to hear about the Mexican American Museum.
The museum. I learned a lot about that too, also. We can all support the museum.
I heard about it on television. I think it might have been Channel 55.
Well, I really just want to thank you for being here. It's really important, I think, that you showing up for an event like this, whether it's to see your friends or hear from what's going on in our state and our community, it just shows that you have a lot of power because you're participating, right? You're showing your power just by participating and by being here. So let me tell you a little bit about me. My name's Camila Bordeaux. And I immigrated when I was a first grader to New Orleans, actually. My parents were recruited. Congresswoman Ruth, was talking about education and, you know, a shortage of teachers. My parents came here because there weren't enough Spanish-speaking teachers at the time. And I think that still applies today. And so we moved to New Orleans, and we were all looking for that white picket fence that we saw in Hollywood, beautiful home, you know, life was going to be perfect after living under a dictatorship for many years in Chile at the time in the 90s, early 90s. And when we got to New Orleans, 2 things. One, it was an amazing community, the vibrant culture, really great people. We got all our furniture from our neighbors. And I think we were the only Hispanic family in the community where we lived. Most of our neighbors were Black, African Americans. We had such an amazing experience. But the other thing, I said there were 2 things, right? The other thing is that we ended up attending a school where both of my parents taught, and where me and my 3 brothers, so the 4 of us, all went as students. And we lived in a community that was deeply, deeply poor, a lot of crime, So you can imagine our surprise after having left Chile and, taken our whole family, especially you can imagine with kids how hard that could be, and didn't get what we were expecting. We loved the people, we loved the culture, but our quality of life, if anything, was possibly a little bit lower than what we had in Chile, where we had our grandparents, our abuelos, and our primos, and everybody. So my parents had to make a tough choice. You can probably guess what choice they made because I'm standing here. But they said, okay, are we going to go back to Chile to be with our family, or are we going to stay in the United States? I don't know when this happened, but within the first 2 years of being in New Orleans, my mom miraculously, or maybe she worked hard, I don't know, got an interview and a call to come to Dallas to be a teacher at Hockaday. Has anybody heard of Hockaday? It is as opposite of the spectrum as you can get from, the poor, unfortunately, school that we were in. So of course we followed my mom to Dallas. And even though it's taken some time because I try to cling to my Chilean roots, I definitely consider Dallas to be my U.S. home. It took a little bit, but we call it our home now. And my dad ended up getting hired at St. Mark's of all other schools. So they kind of got to work a little bit together since the two schools often partner in different ways. All that to say, I'm about to get to why I'm actually here. Education, as you can see, has always been an important part of my life. And no doubt my parents influenced me. I eventually went into the classroom, taught for 6 years. I loved it. And it took our family 20 years to earn citizenship. So when I finally became a citizen, and some of that was me delaying, again, trying to hang on to being a Chilena, and not going for this American citizenship thinking it would change everything, and of course it didn't, it only added to my life. I wanted to go vote. And ahead of voting for the first time as a 27, 28-year-old, I decided I was going to volunteer for a campaign because I was like, ooh, I'm a citizen, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go door knocking. And I loved door knocking. I met so many people, it was so fun, and it was really inspiring for me to have conversations with people at the door, but most of you also know that most of the time nobody's answering their door and you're just leaving information behind. But what really got to me was that I would walk to one door because my little application from the campaign that they told me to use would say, go knock on this door, and I would go. But then it would tell me to skip 20 houses and go all the way over there. And I would see families living in these other houses. Like, why am I skipping these houses? And some of you know, right? Campaigns have limited resources. So you gotta decide where you're gonna invest your time and energy. But for me, that wasn't good enough. So I found March to the Polls, which LULAC played a big part in the early days, and still, as a supporter. And I learned that March to the Polls, since I had left the classroom, I was no longer a teacher, I missed interacting with students, that March to the Polls was going into the classroom and preparing students to vote. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go volunteer there. And now fast forward, I could never say no to volunteering. I was hired as the first full-time staff member for the organization. And let me tell you what we do that would have really helped me when I went to vote for the first time. What we do is we talk to 70 high schools across North Texas by visiting them in the classroom and giving them voter education. And then we register those that are eligible. And would you believe that when we walk in, 75% of students, 75% of them, and it's 20,000 students across the 70 high schools that we are, that are all seniors. 75% of them think that their vote matters. But the part that's a little bit sad is that only 27% of them agree that they have enough information to vote in an election. And that's the kind of thing that makes me want to cry, because even me, after going through school, being 10 years older than these students, having my master's, feeling pretty confident in my knowledge, when I went to vote, what was on my ballot was not at all what I expected. When I was looking for my polling location, I had no idea where to go or what to click on. I needed somebody to help me through it. So I'm really grateful for the program that we have. After we talk to the students, we spend about an hour with them in the class. Would you believe that 75% of students, we go from 27% to 75% of them say, okay, now I agree that I have sufficient knowledge to go vote and go participate. So it's not that they don't think their vote matters. They know that their vote matters. It's how the hell do I make my voice heard? How do I do it? Where do I go? What does it mean when somebody tells me to go vote? And let me share something else that we do. Remember I said we're at 70 high schools. At 32 of those high schools, we have student-led civic engagement clubs. This week, I love sharing this story, we had one of those high schools march from their high school, alongside Senator Royce West, mind you, to the closest polling location about a mile away after school. You had a group of about 20 students and the school's marching band. You could not get more excited. Hello? Oh. By seeing those students and the marching band and the senator and their school board trustee came and celebrated them. Those are the sorts of things that when us adults sometimes are in the way, like if you just step aside and let them come up with their ideas, they're going to make it happen. And they had so much fun. We also took 60 students to a school board meeting this past week on Thursday, and 7 of the 9 elected trustees took their time, an hour of time ahead of the actual public meeting, to meet with the students. And some of the students voiced concerns about bullying or about teacher certification. I mean, they know what they're talking about because they're experiencing it. And the trustees were able to immediately talk to them and get some action from the Dallas ISD administration that was there. It was amazing. The last thing we do is community engagement. I mean, there's a lot with that, but I'll invite you right now. Typically in January, we host a 4-county volunteer deputy registrar training where you can come and in an hour and a half, you are made eligible, you're deputized to register voters in Dallas, Collin, Denton, and Tarrant County. That's all in one night, and that's through our partnership with the local elections department. So let me tell you one last thing, and then I'll leave you. There's lots of ways that you can participate, and even with your friend, if you decide, convince your friend to come with you. We have 70 high schools where we do the in-class voter education. We want you to be the one that speaks to the students, especially if you've lived in a neighborhood for some time. You're here. To me, that means you're an expert in something related to voting and civic engagement because you are civically engaged. Talk to them about your experience. They're 18-year-olds and they're ready to hear about it. The other thing, we have so many schools that need a club mentor. And that just means going once or twice a month to their after-school meeting at 4:30. And I'll tell you right now, Trinity Garza, the students there, they need a mentor. Irma Rangel, they need a mentor. Molina, Pinkston, Seagoville, Sunset, Samuel, all of these high schools, you have students that are so excited, and we actually do pay a teacher at the campus to help run the club, but we need community mentors to be there with them, so we invite you to participate in that way. And then the last thing I'll tell you is this. Sometimes I get really excited about, oh, we went with the marching band, and oh, the students are having so much fun. But the reality is there are a lot of issues that are affecting us all in many ways, and many of those issues are the reasons why our students are driven to participate in our clubs. Maybe they're experiencing hunger or poverty or crime or poor conditions at their school, and that's why they join this club. And it could be, if it's hunger, it could be because we offer pizza after school. But once they're there and learn about the power of their voice, then they stick around. But we have a lot of students that attend these club meetings. The reason that I bring that up is to say that even though there's a lot of hardship in our community, muchas dificultades, and we are creating a positive culture where they can have fun, and civic engagement can be fun, and they can be with their friends too, in order to participate in our democracy. So I hope you join us, and this is actually the last thing I'll say. On our website, we have both Spanish and English simplified, like one-sentence descriptions of the 14 propositions. And I could be wrong. I think the League definitely has a resource like this. Ours is really short. But other resources might have some bias, which is why we wanted to make sure to bring out something that was hopefully like as simple and straightforward as possible without introducing bias. So I have a bunch of copies of this. I just invite you to help me change the culture of voting by giving this to somebody who's not here today and getting people to go out to vote on Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. anywhere in our county. I'll pass these out.
Just remember that there's a lot of stuff happening at the legislature. The session is on. Some bills that really are just incredible coming out of our legislature. But that impacts us because the vote is a sacred thing we have in this country according to our Constitution. And they will do anything to limit people of color to assuming their rightful place in government and in corporations and everywhere. And so if you only look at the stats in the public school system of Texas, there's 5.5 million people there. And guess what? 54% of those are Hispanic and about 15 to 17% African American. So you see where this is going. They're already doing the surveys. The one thing that I like about the whole concept here is working not only with the kids. All research indicates that the younger the people start in voting, they get their parents, their uncles and aunts, and their cousins to vote. And they stay in longer in the process. Look, the most important thing we have is the vote. If you don't like what the governor or the president or the state rep or the senator or the congressperson, you can vote them out. You got to think like that. But if we're not registered and we're not voting, things are not going to change in our state and in our country.
That's amazing. And I have one more thing. I'm proud of myself for this little phrase I came up with. That even though the complex language that's on the ballot is not everyday language that we use, which is annoying in and of itself, it very much affects our everyday routine, the things that we're voting on. But it's like hidden behind all these very big words that I don't use on an everyday basis. So please encourage people to vote.
Any questions for Camille?
I have a question. Yes, you were talking about how you need mentors. I'm a precinct chair. So I am asking you to call the elections department and find out what precinct chairs are in that area. And if anybody knows what we do, it's a precinct chair. So they would be a great speaker to go and speak to you.
I love that idea. Okay.
And also, they can run. If they're 18 years old,
They can run.
they can run to be a precinct chair as well.
Oh, that's great. I love that idea. Gracias.
Incidentally, believe it or not, a Republican state official for the Department of State and the state of Texas actually came up with a rule about having every child that's 17 and a half to 18, actually came up with a rule that every school system should actually register every child. Unfortunately, they don't do it. But there is a civil rights project called the Texas Civil Rights Project. Camille. The Texas Civil Rights Project actually monitors every school system, and they do a report annually as to how they're doing. In the beginning, only about 15 to 25% were registering their kids. It has gotten up to about 65%. Remember, there's 1,100 districts in the state of Texas. That's a hell of a lot. And 5.5 million students. But if we could get 100,000 of those, we could make the difference, you know. So think about that.
This is my last pitch, actually, to my speakers that are here. That we have the privilege of being in front of all the seniors, and then in the clubs we have the 9th through 12th graders. But if you have announcements, opportunities that you want high school seniors to be made aware of, then you can also share that with us, and we'll see if we can include it when we go out and visit with the students. Okay? Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Let's hear from Camille. I was so impressed last year when the students at Duncanville, where I live, wanted to go and register. But they wouldn't provide them with a bus to get there to where the annex was, where you go and actually register. All the high school kids walked out, and the principals had to go and guide them all the way about a couple of miles from the high school so they could register to vote. But every child should be registered to vote. I don't care who it is. I think that's one thing we can stand behind. We have and thank you very much for being here. Our champion for LULAC and for the state of Texas and for North Texas. And you know, we can now in the chair. Myself, in case you didn't show up. followed this very well. And unfortunately, she used to be her cousin's assistant. Her cousin was the president of the House Democrats, did a hell of a job. We just lost with here, and we miss her very much. But we have a cousin, Deputy Menudo, has a real interesting background that you're gonna like. She got on the city council in Kyle, Texas, which is right close to Austin. And as such, as an council person, she was elected as the first female president of the Association of Municipal Hispanic Officials. Honorable Tenorio also served as the Texas Municipal Board, an organization that represents the interests of Texas City in the legislature and provides training to office holders. Great to you, Deputy Tenorio.
Cuando votamos, ¿qué pasa? Cuando votamos, cuando votamos, ganamos. Cuando votamos, ganamos. Cuando votamos, ganamos. One more time, guys. We've had our coffee, we've had our menudo. Let's do this. Cuando votamos, ganamos. Okay, there we go. My name is Stephanie Tenorio. I am the Hays County Treasurer. I want to take this opportunity to tell you Dallas County has a fabulous treasurer, Paulina Madrona. Oh my gosh, let me tell you, she's become my mentor. This is my first year as the Hays County Treasurer, and I'm here to talk to you about a little something dirty. It's Prop 12. What is Prop 12? What does that matter? Prop 12 is just about Galveston County, right? No, it is not. Prop 12 is your roadmap of getting rid of local control. Why is that important to you? Why should you care who handles your money? Why should you vote for me? Why should you vote for Pauline? Why should you have somebody who actually represents your interests, who is not beholden to a commissioner's court, who is not beholden to a county judge, who is not beholden to developers, who is not beholden to corporations, but to who? To you. Galveston County came forth. They were one of two counties that came forth to remove their county treasurers. One of them was not ready for it and did not make it through legislation. The second one was Galveston County, which was carried by who? Does anybody know who carried it? The chairman of the Budget Committee carried it. And carried it through all of the steps. Got everybody believing, oh, it's just Galveston. It's not going to affect your area. But the reality is it does. It is under the guise of saving you money. The Galveston County elected treasurer said he was going to save Galveston County $500,000. $500,000. Guess what? It's actually costing Galveston County $60,000 more than what it cost to just have their treasurer in place and have those checks and balances. Why are checks and balances important? Why is it important that nothing can go from your bank account to anybody else unless I sign? Why is that important? Well, let me tell you why it's important. You get a commissioner's court that wants to ram through something. Guess what? I'm your last line of defense. I am the last person. If I don't sign, si no firmo, no pago. Right? We are your last line of defense. We are here to represent you. We're here to take care of your money. And I want you to know that we are proud to do so. We are a constitutionally mandated position. Why? Because the founders of Texas knew it was important to safeguard what? Your money. I am bonded. Every single one of us treasurers in the county are bonded. We are personally liable if something happens. If your treasurer is no longer there in the position, oh, we'll just give it to someone. We'll give it to Mary over in auditing. Well, guess what? Mary isn't bonded. Mary isn't personally liable. Guess who is? Your treasurer. So I'm here to speak to you, to ask for you to vote no to Prop 12. It's very important that we maintain a level of checks and balances at our county level. It is also extremely important we maintain local control. First, you come after your treasurer. Oh, we got rid of that one. Now what's next? Don't let them do it. Vote no. Does anybody have any questions? Nobody has any questions? Okay. Yes, sir.
Could you summarize the three most important points of your speech that you just made?
The most important parts of my speech, one, when we vote, we win. That's number one. Number two, a level of checks and balances is necessary to assure the monies that are in the county coffers remain in the county coffers and are only spent when they are supposed to be spent. Additionally, one thing I did not note is your county treasurer is your county investor. I go to school and take classes to learn how to invest your money. You get rid of this position, you no longer have somebody who's qualified and quantified to do so. And I am personally liable for every penny that comes into the county and out of the county. And I do that with pride, dignity, and respect to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Any questions for Daphne?
Hi, Daphne. Welcome to Dallas.
Thank you.
You remember us, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, I didn't tell you, I used to serve as I was the vice chair for the Tejano Democrats.
Yes,
I was.
Tejano Democrats, and I was the secretary, so we got to know
Yes,
each other
we
really well. So thank you for being here and reminding us that now we have our election date is Tuesday.
Yes.
So please go vote 7 to 7. And I've shared my recommendations for all those 14 propositions. I've texted those to friends, and under the no, vote no, I have Proposition 12.
Thank you so
it's on there.
much. Thank
and
you
of course,
so
the
much.
other ones, you do need to vote for Proposition, you vote yes, Proposition 4, which is to lower our property taxes, and Proposition 9, to give retired teachers and staff a much needed cost of living increase.
Oh, additionally, I am a state Democratic Executive Board committee member. The SDEC has taken only one position on propositions, and that is for teachers. Thank you.
Daphne,
I wanted to.
Daphne, I just want to say welcome to Dallas. Say hi to your husband. So her husband is Willie Tenorio.
I'll show you, David.
Her husband's Willie
Will you
Tenorio.
pay attention to today, please?
Her husband's Willie Tenorio. He was a school board member in Hayes. And interesting story, him and I ran for the presidency for the Mexican American School Board Association. And Willie beat me. And she was a strong supporter. His wife was helping campaign. And the Mexican American School Board Association is a statewide. They've been advocating for Latino students. They were actually the ones that brought in mariachis in the schools a long time ago. So they've been around 50 years advocating. And her husband is Willie, and say hi to him. Welcome to Dallas. Great people, very nice person.
So I'm going to say something about that education thing that we were talking about, the Hispanic education. Okay, 1 minute, I promise. My husband was on the school board for 13 years. During that 13 years, when my husband runs, you get me. When I run, you get my husband. We're a package deal, okay? So in those 13 years, I learned a lot. One of the most important things that I learned was that if we don't get involved as parents, if we don't get involved as leaders, if we don't get involved as local people who believe in the future of our country, we lose it all. The very foundation of democracy falls in that schoolroom. The important places that need to have policy checks on the local level are those school boards, our State Board of Education. You want to make changes, you want to make sure that we're teaching the Hispanic, Mexican, American history, you need to vote in your school board elections. You need to become a part of the Mexican American School Board Association. You need to become active. We no longer have the opportunity to just sit down and lay back. That time has passed us. And we've seen what has happened to us as we've allowed that to pass us by. It's time to activate, and I urge you to do so. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that, this concept that Camille brought, or no, that brought here about, getting the kids to register to vote. I think that is, if we could implement that statewide, you can imagine how we can turn this around in the state of Texas. So whatever you do, there's nothing to say. You can't speak to the superintendent or the chairman or chairperson of the board and ask them what the status of that school is in terms of how they're getting their kids registered to vote, those that are eligible. That's simple, even a call there. But if you go to their board and ask it in public, you have to put that in the minutes that you asked about that, and they have to respond. Or you put it in writing in particular, they have to respond. You start building a case, basically. So those of you that are civic-minded, there's nothing wrong with calling the superintendent and the board. Take up 5-10 minutes and tell them, you know what, I'm really afraid that these kids are not getting their full education like they should, like their civic responsibility to right to register to vote. Thank you. And now,
Without further ado.
I'm sorry, we had some difficulties, but everybody has a demand for our chair of the Mexican American Legislative Congress. As you know, Victoria Niave is a former national president of the youth for many years and did a great job and went on to great things. So welcome her with a
Are there any high school LULAC youth in the room?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm so glad that you ladies are here. So I joined LULAC when I was your age. I got to tag along with Hector, with Connie, with Richard Zambrano of the world, like so many individuals that have left a legacy for LULAC. And so we want you. We're really glad that you're involved. We know we want you to run for office also, and we know that you're going to do amazing things, so you're with the right organization and the right people, so I'm really glad that y'all are here. So I'm so thankful to LULAC because I learned so much as a young person growing up. When I was in high school is when I first, and through LULAC at the Washington Youth Leadership Seminars, when I first learned about what vouchers were. And so my colleague, Representative Benton Jones, is going to speak to vouchers and what the fight that we're having in the legislature right now. But LULAC, what it has instilled in me, especially ahorita, as we're having these huge fights on attacks on our Latino community in the Texas House is something that I carry very deeply. So we also want to thank LULAC because LULAC has stood with us, coming to testify at the hearings. LULAC has been there at the press conferences that we've had at the Capitals and has been there for, since 1929. Interestingly, so this year I serve as chair of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. We are the largest and oldest Latino caucus in the entire country. The last female to serve as chair of MAL was actually 30 years ago. And so I'm really honored this role and responsibility. What we do is we run floor strategy. We have amendments and we fight like heck with everything that we have for issues that uplift the Latino community, for our schools, for small business, and also we're on the defense a lot against these attacks. So I want to share with y'all real briefly some of the bills that we're fighting right now in special session. So as y'all know, the legislature is only in session once every odd numbered year. It's generally from January through May. The governor has the power to call an emergency special session, which is a 30 days increment for his pet projects, things that he wants to do. They're usually not in our favor, and that's what's happening this month. So we started special session earlier this month, and the main issues are anti-Latino legislation, the immigration bills, vouchers, and he had a COVID bill. So 2 bills I want to talk to you about. The first one is Senate Bill 4. Senate Bill 4 has already passed the Senate. We fought like heck to kill it in the House. Unfortunately, we were not able to kill it, so it's on its way to the governor to be signed. And this is what it does because it's devastating for the Latino community. Senate Bill 4 essentially is going to create a mandatory minimum jail sentence of 10 years. 10 years for smuggling and stash houses. And let me explain how this impacts our community. You're driving an undocumented family member to the grocery store, okay? And you know that that person, there's language that says knowingly, you know that that person does not have papers. This is not uncommon. Like, this is natural for us in our families. You can now be charged with this crime and get 10 years automatic mandatory minimum jail time. Normally, judges have the discretion to determine after hearing the facts and making a decision, you know, what jail sentence, probation, what they want to do. But what this bill does is it eviscerates judicial discretion by putting this 10-year mandatory. The other ways that it can impact, and we were trying to get this legislation, trying to get information in there to protect our community. There is something called, so if it's your parents, if you're driving your parents, or if you're driving your grandparents, it's within the third degree of consanguinity, which means the third degree of the bloodline, your parents, your children, your grandparents. In that case, you get a lower jail sentence, or you can use it as an affirmative defense. But that does not include the fourth degree, which is your primas, your tias, like, that's not protected, unfortunately. We have a lot of mixed status families, not just in Dallas, but all across the state, of Latino families who you may have, you know, a grandparent or somebody that doesn't have papers. So the other part is the stash houses, they call them. So if you are renting, if you're letting somebody use live somewhere where you knowingly know that they don't have papers, you can now be charged with this 10-year. It's unacceptable to have these types of bills. We have killed our caucus with, you know, the support of other caucuses también, have worked hard all session long, and we have killed bill after bill after bill after bill that are anti-immigrant, anti-Latino, and the fact that they weren't able to do it all session, they you know, unfortunately this one is going to be signed into law. So we need help spreading the word. We're working on some town halls that we're going to be having to talk about what these bills do, because we need individuals to know. I'll give you another example. You don't even have for rape or murder mandatory minimum jail sentences. Okay, so this is a clear attack on Latinos. It's an attack on our community. And the last time that we had really, really severe legislation like this was back in 2017. My first legislative session was Senate Bill 4, the Show Me Your Papers bill. So with that, I'm going to talk to y'all. But the second bill, that's it's even bigger and worse than the one I just told you all about. House Bill 4. They're both 4. Senate Bill 4 and House Bill 4. House Bill 4, what it does is it is going to give local law enforcement the power to arrest somebody or deport if under state law, because right now that's not a crime under state law, for this new crime. It's a new sweeping broad state crime called illegal entry. And what that does is if an officer believes that you're not a citizen, and this doesn't just impact immigrants, this is not just an anti-immigrant bill, this also impacts American citizens. So people like Tristeza, who served in the Marine Corps, fought for her country, she can be asked to show proof of her citizenship. And if you cannot prove your citizenship, they have the right to detain you and deport you. Never before have we seen legislation this broad and extreme, and what the governor and the far-right Republicans are trying to do with this is they're trying to test a Supreme Court case called Arizona versus United States. Arizona passed a law very similar to this, where they were trying to give local police the powers, similar immigration powers. There is case law after case law that shows Supreme Court cases that immigration powers are powers that are within the power of the federal government, not the state. So Texas is trying to test and see how far they can go so that local law enforcement, they're trying to see how far a state can go to enforce immigration law. So what we did is we wholeheartedly believe this legislation is unconstitutional. That's why testimony against this legislation is really essential. We've been trying to lay the groundwork for litigation, because surely there's going to be a lawsuit to try to hold this bill unconstitutional. The other big thing about this bill is it isn't just restricted to the border, it has complete statewide impact. So it's all over the state. And we know that there are lots of law enforcement that do lots of good work. Since 2017, law enforcement has tried to build up police community relations that are so important so our community can come forward and report. So we know that this is going to have an impact on, we had domestic violence, the Texas Council on Family Violence. Tell me when to stop, I know we're probably limited on time. Others, domestic violence survivors, speak about the chilling impact that this is going to have. We need people to report crime to law enforcement, and so it's going to have an impact on police community relations, and finally it's going to have an impact on business. Imagine businesses that have a high Latino population, and law enforcement is now going to be able to do essentially ICE sweeps in places of business, and if you cannot prove your citizenship, again, they can detain you or they can deport. I'm happy to get into the nuances of the bill and explain other little details of it, but it is broad, sweeping legislation that is completely unconstitutional, but that has not stopped Republicans in the past from passing unconstitutional laws. So we fight it in the House, we fight it in the Texas legislature, we're going to have to fight it in the courts, and we got to fight it at the ballot box at the end. So after 2017, SB 4 passed, we saw Latino voter turnout significantly increase. We have to spread the word about legislation like this. So that's why I'm so thankful to LULAC and all of these different groups, the student voter groups, for really turning out the vote. But we can make change. So with that, just thank you for what y'all are doing. I'm happy to answer questions on those bills. Yeah.
So thank you for your work. Those bills are really scary and intentional. I know they're trying to get the SCOTUS because they think SCOTUS is going to give them what they want, like they did with Roe v. Wade.
Totally recognize the agenda. And I think that if Trump can't get on that ballot, I think he's going to tag Abbott. And so Abbott is getting all this fundraising into his war chest so that if Trump can't run because of all these legal battles, he's going to have the money. But, so two things on these bills. When I saw it, I thought of two things. One, that we have enough U.S. citizens who are willing to go get arrested, to go into these small towns and let those guys arrested and us not speak a word, not prove that we're U.S. citizens, and let them do it to us so we have our injured parties.
And what we have seen in the past after SB 4 vote is American citizens were actually arrested because they couldn't prove their citizenship. I now carry my passport with me. Like, we think of all our family members. We shouldn't have to. But that's the state of the law. We can bring change. So yes, there are organizations like ACLU, Malden, and others who are going to be looking for things like that. We believe there will be civil rights violations, especially when things like that happen.
Yeah, but I think if we flood the city, like make it backfire on it. Then you get a flood of us to go do it intentionally. Lock us also, take us there, because then it'll be like, you got what you asked for and then some.
We need to do everything to raise our voices on these issues because they are devastating. I know there's Robert and then there's a question back here. So.
But what do you think also about calling for, like, if all the Latinos just didn't go to work for a couple of days, if we had a strike like that, it would shut everything down. If the Hispanic and Black churches said we're not going to make our deposits from our Sunday and our Wednesday night, we did that for a little while, it would really make some impact. So
economic boycotts have been part of civil rights, ways of protesting. I've talked with LULAC about something like that. And then I know Robert.
Okay, hi, good morning. My name is Valeria. I'm here with SB LULAC. So I've been seeing on social media, this is honestly heartbreaking to hear that my community is being attacked, and this is heartbreaking. For sure, I've been seeing on social media that a few police enforcements are reaching out to communities and they're reinforcing that they're not going to do that, they're not going to follow through. And I think that's very important for us to reach out to our law enforcement so that they are backing up our community. Because why? It's not fair.
Agreed. And thank you for your comments. So what we did in 2017 was we brought law enforcement in to talk to our community about that when SB 4 before, and we're gonna be talking to them about it now. The concern that we have is like really a broad statewide concern, so like, let's say even Dallas PD chooses not to enforce, doesn't mean like a small town right next door is not going to. Like, we all know what cities not to drive through or else you're gonna be pulled over, and that's the concern that those folks are gonna be enforcing it, and so, yeah, thank you for that.
Just real quickly, I wanted to let you know about the history of deportations of Mexican Americans. The biggest one that impacted our country was back during the Depression in 1933. The Repatriation Act of 1933. It affected 3 million. I guess that's 3 million back then. That was our grandparents' generation. So just think about that. If that happened back then, and anybody could go out there and just deport you. Once again, it didn't matter whether or not if you were Mexican, a U.S. citizen or not. This is the same thing.
And that those fights that we had in those years, the fights when LULAC was founded, the fights in the civil rights era, are fights that we're now having today in 2023. So just as the year the Latino vote is rising and we are voting in unprecedented numbers, so we have to continue because that's how we bring change. So again, muchísimas gracias. Thank you all so much for what you do. We have to continue to fight against these bills, raise awareness, spread the word, register folks to vote, and turn out to vote at every single election. So gracias.
Thank you very much for being here. It's probably our fourth or fifth stop, right? Not yet. Okay. We also happen to have a good friend with us here today, Mr. Vinton Jones, who represents District 100. He's a newbie at the legislature, but let me tell you, he's been to almost every breakfast that we've had here in the last 2 or 3 years, right? And so I'd like to bring it forward, but before I continue with you, we have somebody in the crowd, and one of our real strong LULAC members, Mr. Jesse Tapaya, passed on last year. Unfortunately, I was fighting my roots in northern Spain because my name is Vasco. But I felt his loss strongly. And we have, I want a 30-second of silence for my friend Jesse Tapala. His mom is with us today. Nelly Tapala, if you could just stand up for a few minutes, 30 seconds, and wish him for, his soul to be in heaven forever. Moment of silence, please, everybody. Thank you very much. Nelly, I want you to know that I have requested that either a building, a park, be named after Jesse Tapala. I don't know how that's going to go, but we're going to work at it. And now, our friend from State Rep 100, Mr. Vinton Jones.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And before I start talking briefly about where we are with vouchers, I want to do something that I think we really need to do, and that's really give Chairwoman Niabe Criado a round of applause for the work that she has been doing during this legislative session. And she is modest, but I'm going to be real. She has worked her ass off this legislative session. And not just being able to be a part of these critical conversations, but having her and her team ready to go to war on these different topics. The House was in session to 4:30 in the morning, talking about these bills such as SB4 and HB4, and her leadership was the reason that happened, because Republicans thought that we were just going to be able to come and just roll over and let these bills pass. And her team, as she always has had a plan to be able to continue to fight. Sometimes when it feels like we can't fight, in those spaces. So I just wanted to publicly just acknowledge the work that no one sees, sometimes except members, and sometimes it's even things that we don't see, to be able to be prepared to wage war, on these important topics, impacting our communities. And so with the time I have left, I want to speak briefly about where we are with vouchers. I know we've talked a lot about them, and that is a conversation that is happening right now during the third special call legislative session. And so as we prepare to close that session on Tuesday, there is one bill that still has not been heard on the floor, and that is the bill about vouchers. And actually, that bill has just been called to the floor as of Friday with the release of HB 1. And so, if you recall and have been following the third call special session, the Senate passed a voucher bill actually at the beginning of the third special session, but in the House, it has been very clear, and this is not a Democrat or Republican issue or line. This is a bipartisan line that we're saying for the third time, no to vouchers.
Yes. Yes.
And what's being put forward right now, as we continue to say no to vouchers time and time again, there's been another bill, the bill I just mentioned, HB 1, that's been put forward as a carrot by the governor to tie in some very critical conversations that we should have been doing and should not use vouchers as a carrot to have this conversation. It's about the very important needed conversation about teacher raises. It's about addressing the $40 billion deficit of per pupil funding that we have in the state of Texas. It's about making sure that we have safe schools, and that doesn't mean just putting armed individuals in our schools. That's about making the needed infrastructure to our schools. That's about making sure that we have the needed trainings for our teachers and our students to be able to navigate their learning environments. And unfortunately, all those things are attached to this HB 1 bill. And so I can be very quick and say that no matter what is attached to this bill, there's a strong coalition both of Democrats and Republicans that are still saying no, because this still has vouchers attached to it, and we are not even interested in opening that door. And if you want to see an example of that door being open, look at places like Indiana, who families that make almost upwards to $500,000 can be able to take advantage of vouchers, versus what we need to be doing right now in our schools is making sure that we are making an equitable investment in all of our public schools before we have any other conversations right now. And that is what we are committed to do. So no matter what, as far as what's being proposed, we're still standing strong in these last days of the third call special session. And if we have to, we'll go again before this body to continue this very important conversation of saying no to vouchers. Please make sure you're following along in these conversations. My office is providing up-to-date information about vouchers. Chairwoman, she's been providing an amazing amount of information about vouchers, and we're just very excited to continue representation of our communities in the State House right now, when so many things are happening to hurt brown communities, to hurt black communities, to hurt disenfranchised and marginalized people like LGBTQ communities, our youth, our seniors, all of these different marginalized groups, and being able to have a voice at this very important table is something that we value and honor greatly. And just thank you again for your support. Thank you for continuing to raise your voices in Austin and also here in Dallas. God bless everybody.
Let's do first, before we conclude, all the speakers to line up right here so we can take your picture to hold this in the next. And so, Ruth, if you would come up to the podium, would you hold just this way? Go ahead, come around this way. Come. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And colorín colorado, cuento acabado. Have a great day. The garage sales are still out there, so don't worry.